Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Amit Thokal. Thank you for joining this webinar on drones for strengthening security and surveillance in the oil and gas industry. Today's webinar will be presented by Manas Nagi, Lead Oil and Gas Industry ideaForge, and Somil Gautam, AGM Industrial Applications ideaForge, along with a special guest, Captain Prasan Tokas, ex-Technology Head, HMEL. This webinar will be highly enriching for officials from government and private enterprises, service providers and consultants working in the oil and gas industry with a focus on security and surveillance. This webinar will be divided in three sessions. The first session will be of 25 minutes, in which Manas and Somil will take us through how drones can address and overcome security and surveillance challenges in the oil and gas industry. This will be followed by a 10-minute session by Captain Prasan Tokas, who will be sharing his experience in deploying drones for security and surveillance in the oil and gas industry. The last session will be of 15 minutes and it will be reserved for Q&A. I request the audience to type in their questions in the Q&A box in the top left corner if you are using your laptop or desktop, and the bottom right corner if you are using your mobile device. Your questions will be taken during the Q&A session only. With this quick introduction, I ask Manas to begin this webinar. Over to you, Manas.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Manas Nagi, and I will be taking you forward through this webinar. Today, we will be discussing various applications of drones in the oil and gas industry. Moving forward, let's first address the agenda. We will be discussing the current scenario and challenges of the oil and gas industry, the applications of drones in the oil and gas industry. Single use cases will be discussed in here. An insight from Captain Prasan Tokas and the question and answer session. Let us first look at the challenges. Oil and gas industry has been the biggest revenue generator for long now. And with the state-of-the-art technology, they've been at the pinnacle of technological advancements. Yet still, they spend more than 37 billion on surveillance and inspection itself. The next challenge that I'd like to address here is the workforce. Now, oil and gas industry is something that's spread across large geographies throughout the world. Each individual facilities are huge, hence the requirement of huge manpower. I remember one of my clients once telling me that irrespective of how many times he requested for 7 personnels for a job, he's usually ended up with 5 or 6. It was like every time someone was missing. Then further on, the COVID-19 situation. We all know, I guess we all are aware, there are a lot of facilities that are, as of now, working only on 5% of their workforces. This is going to change a lot, not just for the oil and gas industry, but for every industry that is into a production system. For the smooth flow of this webinar, we have divided it into 2 sections where we'd be individually discussing the applications of drones under security and surveillance and under mapping and inspection. Like we just talked about, the geographic aspect, the aspect of the part that every facility that oil and gas industry holds today is huge. The first application I'd like to discuss is perimeter surveillance. I remember once one query came into us wherein the client had about 25 kilometers of perimeter, and he had to address it using workforce. The challenges were usually with the fact that they had to work on 8-hour shift, and the perimeter could be very well surveyed from the inside, but the outside was sometimes aligned to certain properties where entry exits were limited. Then, of course, there were still areas that were inaccessible. Nighttime, the patrolling became even more challenging. Then, of course, the line of communication between the command and control center and the people at site was always in question. Now, when we talk about drones, if you look at the set picture, we have these purple dots on the map that says WP. These are waypoints. Now, waypoints are locations that you can point out in the map on the drone software, and the drone will autonomously fly to those locations. Now, adding these waypoints are very easy. You just probably have to right click, pop, and it adds a waypoint. There are dynamic waypoint adding systems as well, wherein while your drone is in flight, you can add another waypoint. You can choose if there is a certain point of interest. The drone could hover around these areas and actually zoom and point at specific locations. The question of accessibility somewhat is solved here. The drones also come in with thermal inspection payloads, which means you could also do these kind of jobs at night. The frequency can be increased. You're not really dependent on people now. And then, of course, a lot of drones are coming in with facilities of integrating to your video management system, which means the live feed can directly send to the command and control center. People can query with the feed there, and all of this data is then recorded, which becomes an evidence of flights or frequency of security and surveillance that are done. While we're talking about security and surveillance, there is another aspect or another use case that I'd like to address: the pipeline monitoring system. I believe we all are uh, aware of the concept of right of use. These pipelines are using are usually run, across cities, across countries. These are hundreds of kilometers, and even the smallest of pressure leaks or pressure changes sometimes hits alarms. I've come across people who are actually setting up laser systems, laser intrusion detection systems as well. The challenges, however, are really towards the length of these pipelines, if you understand. Having physical inspection done is limited. Then, of course, at times the uh, autonomy or the inspection itself is sometimes under question. Then, of course, there could be false alarms. And every time there is a situation to address, a QRT team has to go all through those kilometers and run down to that situation. Of course, encroachments and thefts are also questions in place. The said picture is actually one of the pipelines that we once had in our purview. Now, every time there is inspection, I'm not sure if all, at least 5 cars in the picture, but not all would probably go, but it does require a huge amount of manpower to cover such distances. When we talk about drone is something that can fly for tens of kilometers, 15s of kilometers, gives you flight times of hours, sometimes more than hours. This situation can be very well addressed with drones. The same answer here lies wherein this feed can be shared directly with the command and control center. Every time there is an alarm, with the state of the art technology that the oil and gas has, drone could be another layer. Every time there is a pressure sensor that sends a signal, or the laser sensor that is sending a signal, drones could be the first responder. They could be there first and actually give the real insight of the situation, a real time intelligence. This could be very useful in identifying what situation it is that needs to be addressed. Records can be maintained of encroachments, of thefts, of any such situations. This could actually save not just economy but time and workforce as well. Now, when we're talking about linear structures, long linear structures, there is one more use case that I'd like to discuss with everyone. That is rail wagon monitoring. It is a rather specific use case, but like any other industry, the oil and gas industry as well is dependent on logistics, which is very well distributed with railways and road transport. But the question here is these entry and exit points sometimes become an area where a lot of fraudulent activities happen. I came across one query. This was rather unusual to come, but the guy came in and said he had false claims, false insurance claims coming to him because people who lived around claimed of accidents that happened and now were pushing the claim onto the oil and gas industry or that particular facility. Now, only if he had this drone flying up in the air, there are a lot of things that he could do. He can look at the raw materials entering and exiting the facility. There are situations wherein people sometimes cling on to the railway wagon, enter into the facility, unauthorized entering. So, all of that can be avoided. Most of all, you can also use the drone to track this rail wagon or the rail wagons to a certain distance as well, so that any such false fraudulent claims that comes into you can be mitigated and dealt with. Now, when we're talking about monitoring as a situation, there is one more thing that I came across while we were working with the security division of a certain oil and gas industry: crowd monitoring or riot monitoring. In most situations, this is something that comes in usually related to workforce issues. We all know oil and gas industry involves a lot of workforce, a huge amount of workforce, out of which we could say these are divided in different layers. There is a certain category, like we have ad hoc workers, we have contractors, we have the people directly associated. So at times in factories, in certain situations, people form groups. There are riots. Now we have the in-place CCTV cameras, even some with zooming and panning, but their field of view is limited. I remember one of the guys coming in telling us he needed the drone right away because there was a blockade and he couldn't see beyond it. Now, drone in such situation becomes the bird eye view. It gives you the view of the whole situation. You can actually assign the correct security divisions to look at the situation. You can see beyond the blockade. You can actually maneuver if there is a vehicle entering or exiting the compound. And but of course, identifying the culprits in these situations, creating a record of any such event is also part of the necessity. Now, when we are talking about zooming into such detail that you can identify a culprit, there is one more use case that I to take you guys to, which is target tracking. This is something that's rather, I'd say, use case specific or a specific application per se. But let's say we were talking about the rail wagon to create a fraudulent entry. Let's say someone actually enters. You know the person is in the compound, but you want to track him down. Now the drone has something that's called target tracking system. In the set picture, you see the car that's moving ahead has a red square outside it. That is how the drone will identify this object and track it through the facility, and also helps you to get the exact location, the exact coordinates of such a target, which means this can be directly shared with the security people so that they can take appropriate actions towards such a situation. There's something that's actually the opposite, but a drone could also be useful for such situations. For instance, a VIP is entered the facility. Now, VIP is our person of interest. We want to maintain security. Sometimes we'd like to have a buffer of, let's say, 50 meters or something to be around this person, to make sure that he's following the correct path, is going to the correct places. No one's actually breaching security. Drone with the bird eye view would help the security personnel to actually create the buffer, to actually have a holistic view of the situation. Putting the target tracking on this VIP or this person of interest, you can track him around, see his movement, and make sure he is surrounded by security personnel at all times. Moving ahead, we'll go to the mapping and inspection operations I'd take it to Somil now. Over to you, Somil.
Uh, Thanks for the introduction and a great session, Manas. Good evening, everyone. My name is Somil Gautam, and I'll be talking about the application of drones other than surveillance in oil and gas industry. Now, as highlighted by Manas previously, drones are no more an equipment that are being used for surveillance only, but they are being employed in a variety of applications such as mapping, surveying, inspection, etc. And in oil and gas sector as well, the UAVs are finding their use in land records, mapping, surveying, inspection, disaster management, etc. Now let's talk about survey and mapping use case. So drones have actually become the next favorites when it comes to surveying and mapping. I'm sure all of you must have read about the Swamitva Yojana, which was very recently launched by our Honorable Prime Minister during the Panchayati Raj Divas, where he's actually introducing drones as a means to maintain land records in rural areas. Similarly, in plants also, let's say a plant has to be extended or a new pipeline has to be laid or some construction has to happen. So during any of these operations, there is a pre-construction survey that has to happen. And this generally takes place with the traditional methods. So these traditional methods are generally thought of as time consuming, labor intensive, and it actually takes a lot of time to see the desired outputs. Using a UAV, you can actually map an entire area of up to 2 to 2.5 square kilometers in a single flight. Once the raw material is captured, you can actually use that raw material to raw photographs to actually process into meaningful data. So most of the clients are actually interested in getting a 2D orthomosaic or a 3D model of the site or a digital terrain model or a contour, etc. Right. Now, please note that since the drones are flying at a height of 60 to 100 meters for capturing this data, the end result is a very high resolution map with a very high accuracy. Now, this doesn't end there. So let's say after the pre-construction survey has ended, you want to track down the construction progress. So even that can be done. Let's say every 15 days you are flying the drones, and then the two maps actually can be compared to see the rate at which the construction is happening and take the necessary corrective actions if required. And it then also doesn't end there. So once the construction is done, the same drone actually can be used for, let's say, inspection of the same building or keeping that same building under surveillance. So actually, drones are becoming as the next best thing for survey and mapping. Moving on, so drones we are also seeing drones as the go-to devices when it comes to disaster management. I'm sure oil and gas industry has one of the best means and mechanisms when it comes to manage any mishappenings. But a UAV can be an added layer in the SOPs. A drone in air on the disaster site can act as an eye in the sky and give a live feed to the security teams and the disaster management teams on the ground, and as also to the central control and command center. So this will enable the team to actually better plan their rescue operations on ground. UAVs can also be used as tools to assess the extent of damage that has occurred. I'm sure some of the department would also be responsible for maintaining the records of the entire damage site. So you can actually have a high definition visual record of the same. So drone acting as a first responder can actually bring down the emergency response down by up to 45%. Moving on, in oil and gas industry, drones are actually finding popularity for monitoring and managing the property. right? So they are also being used for maintaining smooth operations in open yards. Some of the applications in open yards could be like, for example, so let's say there is a huge area and you want to see what is the capacity of the raw material that it can actually hold. So drones can actually be used there. Let's say once the operations have started and you have actually started stacking up the raw material there, it can actually help you manage those stacking of the raw materials efficiently and use the space more efficiently. So one of the use cases is that people generally come across that there is some sort of miscreant activity, pilferage or theft happening in these open yards. So drones can be actually used to keep the entire site under surveillance, both during day and night time. One of the increasingly popular use case which we are seeing in open yards is the stockpile estimation. So, like for example, there's a stack of coal which needs to be estimated. So the volumetric analysis of the same can actually be done using the drones. Hence, UAVs actually can be used efficiently to manage the space and overall operations of the open yards. Now let's talk about how drones can actually be used for asset inspection. Now, since multi-copter drones have the ability to vertically take off and hold their position at a certain point in air, they can actually be used for vertical asset inspection, and they can go as high as up to 400 to 500 meters above ground. Now, a drone can actually transmit a live HD feed of the situation to the ground control station, where the snapshots and the high definition videos are actually being recorded for later analysis. So these days we are also seeing that industry is actually moving towards renewable energy. So let's say solar panels are being employed at sites for powering up their infrastructure. So drones can actually be used for inspecting those thermal, those solar panels. A drone with radiometric thermal can actually pinpoint the area of the solar panel which is faulty. Not only this, the drones can just not be, so the drone can not only tell you the surface condition of the chimney or your vertical tower, but it can also help you with the detection of thermal leakages. Since there is some level of modularity in the drones, those sensors can actually be replaced with another sensors like within 30 seconds, and your drone is actually ready for the next application. So let's say there's a thermal leakage which is observed in a chimney. The drone fitted with a thermal camera can actually go up and pinpoint the location where thermal leakage is happening. So these are some of the ways in which drones are being used for maintenance operation. While the use of UAVs, with the use of UAVs, the frequency of inspection can be increased manyfold, and hence it helps the bringing the downtime to a new low. So these are some of the applications in surveillance, mapping, survey, and inspection for inspection use cases. Drones are actually acting as force multipliers, and our customers are able to patrol their assets more frequently and efficiently, leading to a 5x increase in area coverage. Since the regular patrolling can now be avoided, it has actually resulted in huge savings. As well, in the time of emergency, the drone can be the first responder, and this has actually helped in drastically bringing down the emergency response time. I'll now invite Captain Prasan Tokas for sharing his thoughts on drones. Over to you, Captain.
Thanks a lot, Manas and Somil. Hi everyone, this side Captain Prasan Tokas. Presently, I'm working with Adani. Basically, I'm heading Adani port at Hazira. But I do have experience with oil and gas. I did my stint of 8 years with HMEL. So basically, I worked in a capacity as lead in automation and security. Yeah, so when I was asked to speak as a guest here, it was a pleasant surprise because I'm all in for drone technology, and I believe this is the future. Now coming to the few use cases which I have encountered and seen. Now the labor issues. I will come first to the crowd monitoring and the labor issues, unrest. Now, let's say about 6 7 months, there was a case when the laborers have gathered and they were blocking the gate, and there was situation, IR situation was created, and they were shouting anti-HMS slogan. So, like our IR situation, we needed to see the root cause and key person who are involved in this protest. This was not possible from my fixed cameras and the PTZ which I have installed at the gate. So drones were used. We launched a covert operations, were able to click the photographs, identify the key persons who were doing this protest, and take an action accordingly. The next thing which comes is the traffic management. The road at the refinery is a single road. We call it a refinery main road. So all the movements, whether it's labor, pedestrian, traffic, you imagine any kind of movement is happening through this road. It's a congested road. And generally during the, let's say the night time or the silent hours, there are bound to be some accidents which happen. And this happens when drivers, they become happy and they bound to crash in on some person. So with this drone, instead of sending the QRT physically, the drone can go out, it can see if there's anybody who has fallen, there's any biker who has been injured, and accordingly we can send the emergency response. Because like all refineries, the adjacent areas becomes my responsibility so that the business continuation is established. Now, apart from this, it's a pipeline surveillance. It's an excellent tool. It's been explained in detail already. So I will just touch upon, you can take this across the pipeline, see pipeline patrols, and actually can reduce the line walkers. And with this surveillance of pipeline, you can actually do the night patrolling also. Now, apart from these examples, there are various applications and you can employ drones in the refinery environment. Now, the ideal situation is checking of periphery. Now, imagine all the refinery have a periphery and these peripheries have the local villagers' land. Now, in my case, the villagers don't allow me to patrol from outside. So generally, the outside area of perimeter is a dark zone. Now, with assist of drones, through one round, I can monitor and see that how many things are there at the basically outside the perimeter. What is the real case scenario? Are there any new development? What is going on? And I can gather the intelligence also. So with drone, this is act as a third eye. Now, these are the few use cases which I have given for the security. But in refinery premises, it's solid. Drones are basically a solid ROI. The refinery background, you use drones for various other purposes like operations, maintenance, project updates. Now, ideally, once you are investing in a new project or there's a turnaround time, the management would like to see the project updates. So what you do is you hire a drone from the market and send the aerial imagery. So with these drones at the site, this can be done in-house. So the cost you are saving, basically, you're decreasing the cost which project was spending to hire the drones. The second thing is inside the refinery only, the pipelines which are going, to monitor them and inspect them. So basically this inspection happens after every 4 or 5 years. And there's a huge cost involved, the scaffoldings are put. Now with drones, you can do these inspections more regularly and the cost is saved because there's an in-house material available. Same thing goes for the flare inspection. The flare inspection, since it's in-house available, take out the drone, do the flare inspection, save the cost. And last but not the least, tankage inspection. Imagine the tankages are there, you have to build the scaffolds, but with the drones, you can do that. Now, these are the few advantages over and above security. So with drones, you have a solid ROI in the operations also. Now, I have brought these examples, how drones can be used, and you can think of number of applications the drones can be used in. And I would like to thank ideaForge, and I would say these guys are one of the best, and thanks for inviting me as a special guest. Their response is amazing. They do the POCs. They have the capability. So thanks a lot. That's it all from my side.
Thank you, Captain, for sharing your experience. This brings us to the end of the speaking session. We will now move on to the Q&A session. So as I can see, we have received a lot of questions. Let me just take them one by one. Somil, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah. So Somil, the first question from our audience is, can you compare drones to CCTV cameras? Under which scenarios can drones do a better job than CCTV cameras, and vice versa?
It's a great question, Amit. So See, CCTVs and drones do one have one thing in common, which is transmitting the live feed from a certain location to the respective control and command centers. But we have to understand that CCTVs are fixed assets, and they provide view from just one fixed angle. Whereas drone, being a dynamic in nature, they can actually give you a more dynamic view of the situation. And they can actually be used, since they have modularity in them. So drones are just not being used for surveillance, but they are being used for a variety of other applications.
Thanks for answering that, Somil. The next question is regarding the how drones can function in varied weather. The question goes like: drones are easily affected by weather, like rain or fog, so which may cause them to malfunction. So, what is the solution to this?
So it is not recommended to fly the drones in the rain in the first place. So the drones are actually, so our drones are specifically IP53 rated, which means they can handle light drizzle. And anyways, no one will actually be flying a drone in a fog and rain, because the visibility is anyways very poor. And the whole point of flying a drone would be that you actually see what is beyond your reach. So yeah.
Okay. The next question goes like: on what parameters should a drone be evaluated for security and surveillance application?
Okay. So this is one common question which I come across very much in the industry. So a couple of parameters on which our customers actually look at are, so first of all, what is the quality of the video which they are looking at? Second would be what is the time on the target which they want. It could range anywhere between 25 minutes till 2.5 hours. Then second is how far they would actually want to see sitting at their central control and command center. It could range from 2 kilometers till let's say 15 kilometers. So those are some of the parameters on which the drones can be evaluated for security and surveillance application.
Okay. The next question is: what is the accuracy or spatial resolution of your drones?
Okay. So our for creating orthomosaics and accurate high resolution images, the drones actually fly at a height of 60 to 100 meters. So the GSD which can actually be obtained is less than 5 centimeters.
Okay. Okay. The next question is on ROW. So the question is: when a drone is deployed in pipeline ROW or over railway wagons, it has to fly over public area. Can you tell about the legal approvals required and how a company like IOCL can overcome this?
Correct. So I also come across this question a lot in the industry. See, what happens is the currently DGCA, who is the apex body for monitoring and controlling the drone airspace, is in the process of coming up with the digital sky platform. So this digital sky platform will grant you the NPNT permissions: no permission, no takeoff. So those kind of digital permissions will be granted by digital sky. And whole of the Indian airspace will actually be divided in green, orange, and amber, green, red, and amber zones. So if it's a green, you will actually be digitally getting the information permission for flying your drone.
Wonderful. The next question is on target tracking. How far can a target be tracked using the target tracking feature in your drones?
All right. So what happens is that let's say you have asked the drone to follow a target, and the drone has a range of, let's say, 2 kilometers. Okay. So drone will actually follow the target till 2 kilometers, and at the boundary it will just stop and hover at the same location, whereas the camera will be pointing in the direction of the vehicle movement. Simultaneously, the real-time coordinates of the vehicle which is being tracked, those will actually be relayed to the ground control station and the central control and command center with which the drone is integrated. and accordingly, your quick response teams on the ground can be deployed.
All right. This question now relates to security. The question goes like this. As drone usage is increasing in the oil and gas industry, it heightens the possibility of drone-related accidents due to either technical malfunction or bad judgment from the operator. What do we do in this case?
Okay, so our drones are actually so first of all, these drones fly in an autonomous, they have an autopilot, which takes care of all the flying with minimum human intervention. On top of that, these drones are actually loaded with fail-safe features. So these fail-safe features could be, let's say there is a high wind, or there is a communication loss, or there is a battery depletion, or there is a battery imbalance, or there is a GPS failure. So there are multiple levels of redundancy that is actually already put in the drone for making it smart. So in all these cases, the drone will actually come back to its own home location and it will land on its own.
Great. The next question is also regarding security, and this is a really interesting one. Here it goes. With the Saudi Aramco drone incident, many governments are now talking about installing anti-drone measures. Can you share some thoughts on what kind of anti-drone measures exist and how one should go about developing an anti-drone technology?
So, we
Hi,
have we at ideaForge have actually gone ahead and partnered with a German firm, Aronia, which is into developing of smart anti-drone solutions. So if you have any queries, if you want to know more about these, you can actually write down to business@ideaforge.co.in, and we can probably discuss what your application is.
Hi, Amit. Captain Prasan here. This question, basically, the fear is real. At HMEL, we have taken a detailed study for the anti-drone measures. Now, it's a new technology. The world was exploring the technology called drone. Now you have to explore the anti-drone measures also. So the measures are various models are available. There is a capture drone where you go and capture the drone. There is a radar based where you can block the drone. You can block the radiations. So there are various solutions and various agencies are working on it. So there is no fixed solution to it, and it's been clearly brought out that Sky has been utilized and they are working on it. So maybe in future we'll get a solution, but right now there is no fixed solution all over the world. In fact, in Saudi, the Patriot system of US failed, which is considered to be one of the best system which detects the UAVs. So right now it's under development because they work on domestic frequency, these drones. So let's see how the systems develop.
Thank you for the added inputs, Captain. The next question is about regulations, actually. So the question is, more than 200 feet, we need UAOP. Although there are centers allotted in the Digital Sky platform, none of the centers are currently offering UAOP. What is your take on that?
All right. So first of all, for everyone's clarification, UAOP is Unmanned Aircraft Operator Permit. It's nothing but a license to actually fly the drone over 200 feet. And this is very right that the centers are in the process of getting approval from DGCA for training the candidates for obtaining the UAOP. And it's a work in progress, but I'm sure that this system will actually be in place very soon.
Thank you, Somil. The next question is regarding privacy. So the question asks, will the organization face any legal problems when it comes to privacy when they operate drones in their property?
Pardon, can you just repeat?
The question is regarding privacy, and it goes like, does the organization face any legal problems when it comes to privacy when they operate drones in their property?
Okay, so what happens is that whenever you have to fly a drone in the coming near future, you'll actually be getting a permission from DGCA for flying in the designated airspace. And since this will actually be flying within the already permitted airspace, I think the privacy issues are going to be very, very less. And since these are going to be, and then post this, you actually have to upload the logs of the flight as well. So I think privacy will not be affected much in this.
Okay. The next question is, DJI and many other drones are currently not NPNT compliant. What do you think is the way forward for individuals holding these drones?
I think since since the legal regulations are in place in the country and they are evolving with time, right? So I think we actually will have to move to a legal framework, and the people holding the non-compliant drones will actually have to move to the compliant ones.
Okay. The other question is, in security and surveillance, how can you get continuous monitoring? It can only, basically, what he's trying to ask is that a drone has a certain fixed flight time, and how do you think drones can be made more effective for this application?
Okay. So first of all, our clients do not go for 24/7 surveillance using the drones, right? So if, let's say, if they have to fly for 4 hours a day, okay. So what they do is, so let's say a drone has a flight time of 1 hour. So they procure multiple batteries, replace the battery with with the next one, and then they just keep on rotating that for keeping the area under patrol. So that is how actually the drones are being used for patrolling continuously.
Okay. The next question is, can drones be used for offshore operations?
Yes, they certainly can be used for offshore operations as well. For the regular, since I said inspection, let's say disaster management, or overall smooth operations of the drilling, they can be used. Very similar to what it is being used for onshore operations, they can be used for offshore operations as well.
Okay. The next question is, what is the operating temperature range of your drones?
Okay, so our drones can actually fly from -10 to 50 degrees Celsius, depending upon which drone you are actually looking at. So those are the kind of ranges in which these drones can be operated.
Okay. We have just one more question, and that, in fact, there are a lot more, but we are actually run out of time. So let me ask you one final question, Somil. Is NPNT applicable within the premises of a refinery? Is a question from Avinash.
So right now, Avinash, I will not have an answer to that because the DGCA is actually in the process of defining the NPNT. The green, red, and amber zones, the DGCA is yet in the process of defining which areas will be coming under those zones or not. So I actually don't have an answer to if your refinery is actually coming under those zones.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Somil. We have actually run out of time. There are a lot more questions, but we have to put a hard stop to it now. So this actually brings us to the end of the Q&A section and the webinar. Once again, I thank everyone for this overwhelming response for this webinar. I hope it was informative, and please do drop us a mail at business@ideaforge.co.in, or you can reach out to us on a contact number which is flashed on the screen. I'll just repeat it. It's +91 91520 30613. With this, we end this webinar. Thank you so much.